When you first got there 30 years ago, were there more Christians than there are now?
There were more. I mean, it still has been a relatively small population, in the tens of thousands, I think, in Palestine overall. But it's certainly, I think, the greater degree, and little by little, it's decreased. But it's really getting frightening now, because I think these last 2 years is sort of like almost pushed people over the edge. And quite frankly, there's a good likelihood that if you're a teenage boy, that you could get shot. I know a number of kids in Al-Azariya where I was, 14, 15-year-olds who have been shot. And look at the difference in that.
For what?
Supposedly throwing a Molotov cocktail. And now think about when the war started with Ukraine and Russia. I remember a story in the New York Times. It was a huge story celebrating that a beer factory was now generating Molotov cocktails to throw against the Russians. And that was celebrated. In Palestine, hundreds of teenage boys have been killed because Israel will say they were throwing a Molotov cocktail. And I know of one case, he wasn't even, I think he was 12 years old last year. I know a beautiful man, a Dr. Salim, who's Muslim, but who used to take care of the nuns at our convent. He lives in Shofat refugee camp, which is part of Jerusalem. They pay Jerusalem taxes, but a wall surrounds them. They're guarded by Israeli soldiers. He tries to run a disability center, but they're constantly being raided, people being detained by the Israelis, and the infrastructure there. If you can tell when you're in Palestine, East Jerusalem versus the West. One has nice sidewalks, good schools. The other is decrepit. Anyway, Dr. Salim, there was a boy at the camp there, 12 years old. It was a Muslim holiday, and he was shot dead. And what they said was he had thrown a Molotov cocktail. He was 200 yards from any soldier, and they shot him dead. But that literally happens every day.
That last line you just heard? Oof, it shook me. It's not just a soundbite, it's a warning. We're talking about the cradle of Christianity. Bethlehem, Nazareth, Jerusalem, the places we read about in the Bible, the places Christianity faith was born. And yet, the people who have kept these places alive for centuries are disappearing. Now, before you think this is some old history lesson, let me tell you, this is happening right now. And it's not by accident. We're talking about families who can trace their roots back hundreds, even thousands of years in these lands. Families who guarded the holy sites through Roman rule, Ottoman rule, British rule. And yet in the last few decades, they've been pushed out, squeezed out, in ways that will make your stomach turn. I want you to stay with me because what you're going to see and hear today is not on your Sunday sermon. It's not on CNN. It's not on Fox News. And it's definitely not in the travel brochures.
Anyone who's been spit on? Any Christians who've been spit on?
Me.
You've been spit on?
Of course, yeah.
What do you mean, of course? That's disgusting.
Yeah, well, but that's the least of it. That's the least of it.
But again, I'm saying this as a perspective, from the perspective of someone who lives in a majority Christian country that's paying for all of this.
Right.
So that's kind of the...
That's the mentality. Or I'll tell you a story. My father is a priest, right? A Greek Orthodox, and he was wearing a collar suit. He visited one time, and we visited the town of Taiba. And there was a checkpoint before you enter into the town.
Can you give us perspective? Where is Taiba?
Taiba is biblical Ephraim. It's when Christ, after he raised Lazarus from the dead, he went about 10 miles to the northeast of Jerusalem, Bethany area, to prepare himself before he would come back to Jerusalem for his crucifixion. Ephraim is known as the town of compassion, of solace. Even in the time of Saladin, it was called Ephraim. It's now called Taiba, which means the good or the beautiful. So it sort of had that reputation. So he went there to prepare himself for his crucifixion. 20 miles, not even 20 miles from Jerusalem.
Interesting. So with your father, who was...
My dad, yeah.
A pretty
priest,
famous...
An American priest, dressed as a priest. And my mom was there too. So we were going to drive it. So there's a checkpoint sort of at the entrance of the town. And then you have many olive groves, which, by the way, I was just talking to someone the other day, they have about 8,000 acres of land, let's say, and over a quarter of it has been confiscated either by settlers and the army allowing them to take their olive groves. And they have no recourse. There's nothing.
Who owns the land?
The Palestinian Christian families.
And it's been confiscated from Christian families?
Well, confiscate, what do you do when they have guns and you don't?
I don't know. You call your patron church in the West and you say, raise a stink,
okay.
Call Ted Cruz.
Right. Well,
and
we
other
called Mike
self-described Christian. Mike
Huckabee came, right? And then the only thing
So what did Mike Huckabee's the U.S.
now,
ambassador to Israel?
He said he was very concerned because also it happened, which they didn't. There's 3 churches in Taiba, an Orthodox, Greek Catholic, and Catholic, and there's also the ruins of a 4th century church that still partially stands, and people will still go there sometimes. Not full services, but just to be at the spot. It's a place that was built by St. Helen in the 4th century, Church of St. George. Settlers burned the brush, and also there's a cemetery right next to it, burned that area.
They burned the cemetery?
Everything's stone there, so nothing burns, but they burned the area around there. So you have grass and brush, that was burned. Yeah. And not only that, I was shocked when I saw how much they've infiltrated. It's one thing, the entrance of town, and you've taken the open land, the olive groves.
This is crazy. Once you hear this, you can't unhear it. And my hope, my prayer, is that by the time we're done, you'll feel it in your gut, the way I do right now. You just saw it. You heard it. This isn't about political opinion. It's about facts. It's about eyewitness accounts. It's about something so raw that if you have even a shred of compassion in you, it should keep you up at night. Imagine, you're a priest walking down the street in Jerusalem wearing your robe, and suddenly someone spits on you. Not once, not twice, but as a common occurrence. Imagine walking into your church and seeing graffiti sprayed on the walls calling Jesus a monkey. Imagine tending to your family's olive grove, land that's been in your family for generations, only to wake up one morning and see it bulldozed, taken, gone. And here's the part that will make your blood boil. The people doing this? Many of them are not even from there. They're settlers from abroad, including the United States, who get full protection, free movement, and zero accountability. Meanwhile, Palestinian Christians, even American citizens, can't even land at Tel Aviv airport. They're humiliated, interrogated, and forced to enter through Jordan. Honestly, it's such a slap in the face to the very idea of justice. And yet, you won't see this outrage trending on social media. Why? Because their story isn't convenient. It doesn't fit the neat political narrative that world powers want you to believe. But I'm telling you, if you care about religious freedom, human dignity, or even basic human decency, you cannot look away from this.
Has nothing to do with it.
How do you think this story ends?
It depends on us. And that's why, maybe I part of me wants to have that message of that we have to do something politically. The Christians have to wake up and tell because it's all in the hands of the United States. It doesn't matter what any other country in the world does. If the U.S. protects Israel, this will continue. And we will get to that conclusion of the denouement, which will lead to a third world war or something of that sort, for sure. So, but also in a spiritual sense, then we also have to recognize, what do we want to be as people? Do we want to follow the way of Christ? Or do we want to follow the way of a Christ who leads us to a better world? We live in this world as best we can in order to prepare for the world to come. Christ came and said, my kingdom is not of this world. So if you're truly a believing Christian, you want to do all the things that will put you in good graces with God when it comes to Judgment Day, right? And that doesn't mean rebuilding the temple. It means living like a Christian and trying to build a society that lives by Christian principles, and your government acting as one that acts by Christian principles. And so that doesn't mean slaughtering other people and leading to their cleansing.
I really appreciate you taking this time.
I think that I appreciate you. I hope it does a little bit to open people's eyes. And I just want to end with one thing.
Of course.
I think the only way, there was the writer Ta-Nehisi Coates, who you may have differences opinion on other things, but what really opened his eyes, he went with a writers group to the West Bank and went and saw how the Palestinians were living and what the reality of the occupation was. And that got him to understand we have to make some changes. And there have been changes in the Black church communities, definitely reaching out. I think that we have to have many more people come and see and not go on an AIPAC junket, but really go. And as Christians, tell your communities we want to go, and we want to go and visit our Palestinian Christian communities. And this might be a little, you could decide what you want to do with it. My dream thing would be to have a trip, perhaps have you come on the trip, perhaps have Mel Gibson, Cat Stevens. It's a funny kind of thing, but he's a guy who was born in the Greek church and is now a Muslim. And Zoran and Brad Lander, and try to give the idea, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. The point is, we have to expose what's going on.
I want to go to that dinner.
All right? Not just a dinner. You're going to come visit with my friends in Jenin, okay? And in Bethlehem. And then you're going to go tell the world what's going on there. Because you're all much better communicators than I am, and the world really has. Aren't we horrified by the idea? Aren't you, as a media person, horrified? Why can't reporters go into Gaza? Why can't, and reporters are not allowed in large portions of the West Bank now. They call them military zones. What kind of press freedom is that? And what are they trying to hide? So the only way that's going to break that is by enough of us saying, enough influencers going over there and saying, I want to see what's going on, and then report back.
That last part, damn. It's the silence that kills me. You have Christian institutions in the West with massive resources, massive influence, yet they are silent while the oldest Christian communities in the world are under threat. This is where it hits me like a punch right in the chest. When she said, if nothing changes, the Holy Land will become a museum of Christianity. Picture it. You're walking through Bethlehem, the same streets Mary and Joseph walked, the same air that carried the sound of choirs for centuries. But now, it's quiet. The churches are still there, the stones are still there, but the life is gone. No kids playing in the courtyards, no candles lit by the hands of locals whose ancestors have been lighting them for 2,000 years. Just tour buses, quick selfies, and souvenir shops. If that doesn't make your heart ache, I don't know what will. Because this isn't just about faith. It's about losing a living culture that has survived every empire, every war, every occupation, until now. And let me be crystal clear. If they disappear, you can't bring them back. You can't recreate the sound of their hymns, the warmth of their homes, the smell of bread baked in a family oven passed down through generations. Once gone, that living heartbeat is gone forever. So here's my challenge to you. What will you do with this? Will you scroll past it? Or will you speak? Will you share this story? Will you demand that leaders stop pretending this is invisible? If you can, go there, support them, buy from their shops, stay in their homes. And if you can't, then at least carry their story. Tell it at your church, your mosque, your synagogue, your dinner table. Because politicians won't fight for them, and the media won't amplify them. And I'll say it one last time. If the birthplace of Christianity becomes nothing but stones and gift shops in our lifetime, then maybe the world really is losing its soul. And I, for one, am not ready to let that happen. If this moved you even a little, don't just close the tab. Share this, speak up, and subscribe, because these are the stories they don't want you to hear. But we're going to keep telling them.